Available for therapeutics. We have a therapeutic pipeline program through which most of those 5 approaches have been funded. We support preclinical, clinical drug development. These could be both pharmacological and non-pharmacological interventions. We support gene therapy and non-invasive approaches. And the funding is up to $500K for preclinical and about $2 million for clinical grants. Again, the deadline is September 26th. This is a closed program, but I thought it would be good for you to see it. We also had launched in the spring a non-pharmacological interventions for gait and balance disturbances. This was the idea of maybe using assistive devices like leg braces or novel technologies like wearable technologies or rehab therapy programs, OT, PT, that could help in Parkinson's disease. This program is actually closed. We are reviewing applications currently. The funding will be announced in October, November. Moving on from biology to therapeutics to biomarkers. And I would say this is a huge component of our work. And I'm just giving you literally one picture of each of these, but just, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this. But this is a huge part of our funding and priority and strategy. Because we don't have a biomarker right now. A biomarker to select patients, a biomarker to diagnose patients, a biomarker to stratify patients, or a biomarker to indicate whether the treatment is working. So here are some of the ways that we are going after biomarker research. Biochemical assays, again, I talked about this a little bit earlier in biology, looking at, can we measure synuclein or tau protein in CSF? How is that different in PD versus controls? So we are both funding generation of, but validation of assays to be able to measure proteins in biofluids. Wearable devices. We talked about this earlier. We all wear watches. We all carry phones, and most of these now have technology to know what you're doing the whole day. And we are funding wearable devices to maybe pick up subtleties in tremor, for example. I think earlier Dr. Grill talked about wearable devices being used in accelerometers to try to understand what kind of movements we can pick up. I think here are the types of devices or biomarker research that we are supporting. Imaging, of course, we would love to have what the Alzheimer's field has now, which is to be able to image beta amyloid. We are not able to image alpha-synuclein pathology, but we're working on it. But in addition to that, there are other imaging modalities and other approaches beyond synuclein that we're trying to go after. Clinical and non-invasive, again, this is an example of this would be heart rate variability, pilomotor response, tears, production, saliva production. These are the types of things that have been hypothesized to be different in Parkinson's than controls, and these are the types of studies that we support. Patient-reported outcomes, I think this is getting even more important in getting patient's voice integrated because we can measure changes all we want, but the patient is going to tell us how effective the therapy really is and how do we incorporate patient-reported outcomes into our studies. And of course, all of that to say that we're collecting tons and tons and tons and tons of big data. How do we even go about storing them? How do we go about curating that data? How do we go about standardizing that data? All of that costs a lot of money, and that's what the foundation is doing now. Because we have all these cohorts, to make them available to the community, they have to be available in such a way that the community can actually do something with it. And so a lot of the idea around getting that data ready and then making it available so that people can then come in, computational scientists can come in and ask questions on correlations and so on. So I would be amiss if I didn't spend a minute on PPMI. This is our landmark biomarker study. And this is very similar to ADNI Alzheimer's study. Again, I talked about the lack of biomarker in Parkinson's disease, and if we can find one, it really could change the way industry looks and views drug development in PD. So we put together an infrastructure around this study. The study has now, I think, it started at the foundation when I started at the foundation in 2010, and we have spent over $80 to $90 million on this study. We now have over 1,000 people in the study, both controls and idiopathic Parkinson's and people with genetic mutations, asymptomatic carriers, and we have prodromal PD, people that we know, such as RBD population, that have an increased risk of getting Parkinson's disease. We're collecting data on them. These are newly diagnosed patients that we're following for 5 years. They gave CSF, they give blood, they give clinical assessments, we do imaging on them. All kinds of biologics information is collected, and all of that data is now available. All you have to do is go in and sign up, and you can run the studies. All of that data is available, raw data and accumulated data, so that you can go in and analyze that data on your own. There's been about 1.7 million data downloads so far using this site. By the way, samples are also available, so you just have to apply to our access and data specimens, and you don't have to run the study because we ran the 1,000 patient study for you. You can just get access to samples for anything you want to do. You just have to apply to the program. Fox Insight is a twist of PPMI. Not everybody can be in a clinical study where they have to go in and provide samples and information, but there are patients who would like to be involved. And Fox Insight is an online study where we're collecting pretty much the same types of information that we're collecting in PPMI. And the aim here is to recruit 125,000 patients and care partners to contribute that data. So again, the same thing. This is a newer initiative. We just launched it last year. So I'd love to talk about it, report in terms of data collected, but just want to bring your attention to it. Funding opportunities for biomarkers. We have an outcome measures program. All of the stuff that I talked about for biomarkers, we fund through our biomarkers program, our outcome measures program. Tools, clinical outcomes, up to $750K, 1 to 3 year grants, deadline again on September 26th. And we have another program that we've launched with partnership with the other neurodegenerative organizations like Alzheimer's Association, Invest in Brain Institute, called the BAND program, because we are keenly aware that there may be biomarkers that are common across these neurodegenerative diseases, because a lot of the same pathways are involved, inflammation, autophagy, and so on. So here, again, this program is open. The deadline is different, September 10th. And here we fund up to 150K, 1 to 2 year grants. So you may be wondering, how does our grant process work? What do we fund? How do you go about getting funding from us? So first of all, I gave you all these deadlines. They're for pre-proposals, and most of our pre-proposals are no longer than 3 pages. They're literally a letter of intent. So it shouldn't be a lot of work. It should be 2 to 3 pages of sending your idea in. So the way normally it works, we launch an RFA, and the pre-proposal is what I was just talking about. We get the 2 to 3 page idea from you, the NGFF staff, as in the 12 people on the staff, reviews most of the 1,500 applications we get each year. We get about 700 in each fall and spring cycle. And the most interesting and novel ideas are invited. I think Chris Coffey talked about this earlier. This is the place where we evaluate scientific rationale. We're not at this stage looking at your clinical trial design. We're not looking at, what outcome measures you are asking for, but really what you are supporting is very linked to PD. Is there a good scientific rationale? Is this novel? If it's not novel, it's an improved approach over something that was done in the past? How is it improved? Once we then invite you for a full proposal, and about 40%, give or take, get invited to the full proposal stage. At this stage, we bring in an ad hoc committee, and again, I'll talk about Chris Coffey. He's been part of these ad hoc committees that now will review your clinical trial design, your outcome measures, your PK/PD information. These are the things that are important to us. Exactly what he said. When things don't get funded, they don't get funded because people haven't thought about sample size and PK/PD readouts, target engagement, and so on. Once we greenlight your grant, we have speedy contracting. We don't take any stake in companies. We provide non-dilutive funding, which means that the drug is theirs. We are not really concerned about getting royalties from their drug. What we're concerned about is getting drugs for Parkinson's disease patients. So we do not seek any IP rights. We, however, do promote data sharing, tool distribution, return payment, things like that, and as I said, active management of our portfolio. And just maybe give me 2 minutes on, once we give you funding, we help you with other things. And I think this is something that, again, Dr. Gurul talked about earlier on retention, recruitment and retention. So I talked about the 4 different cohorts that we have. We also have tools and specimens. We have a industry tools consortium where, maybe less relevant for this room, but we develop antibodies. We make bench tools. We make mouse models. We make viral vectors. We make protein available for your ELISAs, for your Western blots. We have a Fox Trial Finder, which I don't know if you know, but is a match.com for people with Parkinson's, people without Parkinson's, and connecting them to clinical sites or clinical trials. So this is completely done anonymously. We have 80,000 people already on this Fox Trial Finder registered. All you have to do is go in and say you're interested in a trial, and when a trial pops up in your area, it lets you know that the trial has popped up in your area, and you can then have the ability to say, I'm interested in learning more about it. And so, this was not intent was not to replicate clinicaltrials.gov, but clinicaltrials.gov is many a times late in telling us whether the trial is still open or not, or is it closed. It also does not match people in the way this tool does. So this is supposed to help in addition to clinicaltrials.gov. And in terms of recruitment and retention, we have a whole team that then comes in. I'm not part of that team, but there's a team that brings in all of the different things that they have learned over the years on how to recruit PD patients and controls, and how to retain them in your trials. And finally, we have Parkinson's or PDAC. Again, this is the way of educating the patient community, because the more educated they are about clinical trial participation, the less of an issue we'll have in filling those trials or recruiting. So once you get funded, we have resources for your trial teams. We identify patient advisors for you so that they can tell you about burden, patient burden. We can develop, again, as I said, recruitment and retention plans. We evaluate study design. A lot of times, we'll sit on the SAB, or we'll join the investigators meeting after we've funded that work. And we optimize, we tell you what to put on Fox Trial Finder to help you recruit and retain patients. And this is, I think, my last slide, sorry. Just want to bring your attention to 2 very quick opportunities. There's a movement disorder school for neurology residents, and again, this is a 2-day course. I think it's happened every spring for the last 2 years, and there's a 3rd one now in spring 2019. I think date and location TBD. But there are course topics around Parkinson's, around movement disorders, pediatric movement disorders, surgical approaches, and so on. Lectures, panel discussion, case studies. If you're interested, please go on our site to get more information on this. And the other one that I would like to bring your attention to is the Evan J. Safra Fellowship in Movement Disorders. This was our way of saying we would like more movement disorders specialists graduating, and this we fund 5 two-year fellowships at leading universities. So the fellows are not applying; it's the university that's applying, and they are basically coming in and saying, we would like to. Here's a candidate we would like to get as a fellow. This would be in addition to what they were going to do, so that we can have that extra impact on fellows that are recruited. And again, this is about $90,000 per fellow per year that we give to the university, and we have supported 20 fellows so far. Finally, we would like to thank all PD patients and our donors that continue to inspire us, without which I would not be standing up here, and we would not be able to provide funding to researchers like yourself. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Devi. We have time for a couple of questions if people have questions. I think, one of the points to be made is your foundation is very sophisticated in this, but there are other foundations, and there are similar approaches. I think actually the Michael J. Fox Foundation has led the way for how other foundations have set up their funding opportunities. So I don't know, are there any questions specifically? Dr. Dovey? I guess one question that I had was, I'm curious about, because we were talking about recruitment retention, if someone had a trial funded, let's say through NeuroNext, do you guys also support other funded trials with some of your support mechanisms like recruitment retention and trial finders? I mean, the Fox Trial Finders is for everything.
It's for everybody. Yeah. Fox Trial Finder is available, whether it's a NeuroNext funded study or PPMI funded study. I know that we have, our recruitment and retention team is like 2 people. So there are, what they've come up with sort of criteria for how much they're able to help. I think the idea is to help every trial, because, even if we may not have funded it, we may have funded it in the past, we may want to fund it in the future, and it affects the entire community. So I think there are criteria that they've come up with sort of in terms of how much we're able to help our funded, directly funded trials, and then trials that even though we may not have touched, how we can help support them. So I think there are materials that they have that they provide to patients, and sort of think Dr. Grill talked about this, sort of social sites and how that can help, and things like that.
And how about people approaching you, outside of the funding opportunities? Do you guys encourage that, or is there an easy way? I'm thinking about other foundations too. There's an easy way to reach your team.
Yeah. People should reach out. I'm here if you have ideas, whether it's some idea that you have, whether that's interesting to Fox Foundation or not. I know not everybody's able to do that, but the idea is to have, we have an open channel. As much as we are able to help, the 12 scientists on the staff are available to speak to you. We're not able to do it for everybody because it's just difficult with the amount of applications we get, but definitely reach out. Again, what I always like to say is people like to talk to us prior to applying, and if you haven't talked to us, please don't get discouraged, because it's only a 2-page pre-proposal. So we're not, it's not too onerous if you're not able to talk to us and find out whether that's a priority or not. It's only 2 pages, so send it in and you'll find out if you get full application invite, whether it's a programmatic priority for us or not.
Great.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks.